Welcome to the Bob Unger Show. We have a very interesting guest today. Her name is Karen Straughn. I got that right?
Yes, you did.
And she was first brought to my attention with regard to Penn State University having this completely, it's like a Saturday Night Live skit, banning the word junior, senior, sophomore, freshman. I mean, they're literally insane. And Karen writes a lot and speaks out a lot about feminism, or at least modern feminism, and her objections to it. And so I'd like to begin by asking you, Karen, did you always have common sense, or was this some type of event that caused you to have an epiphany and get common sense?
I was never a feminist. I always thought, "Oh, what the heck are these women on about? They seem kind of kooky, and nothing of what they say really dovetails with my reality." But uh, it's kind of, I described it once in a book chapter I contributed to an anthology. Um, they were like gnats outside my screen window, and you're busy living your life, raising your kids, making ends meet, trying to make the money stretch past the end of the month, and you just ignore that swarm of gnats outside your screen window. You definitely don't go and look at what's down underneath the window outside that's attracting them. And then there were a few things that brought it to my attention that this was something that I needed to actually talk about, rather than just, in the privacy of my own mind, think about. And that was, I divorced my husband. I realized that the legal system in Canada would have allowed me to completely destroy him. Uh, and they actually kind of encouraged me to do that. They, in fact, did not allow me to be as fair as I would have liked in the settlement. And then on top of that, I stumbled across a men's website, uh, totally by accident. I was writing dirty books for women. There were a lot of feminists in that community, and someone posted a link and said, "Let's go over here and make fun of these guys." And the article that they were linking to was it was pretty trivial. The topic was fairly trivial. Wasn't anything, that should get anybody outraged. Like, ooh, hard science fiction isn't available anymore. You always have to include a romantic subplot to attract the ladies. And I was like, well, the ladies are the ones who drag their boyfriends to the theater or buy them the DVD box set. So, and the men tend to be the ones that are going to rip it off of Napster and watch it 10 times without paying for it. So, why would anybody actually make a movie specifically tailored to you? But uh, when I went into the comment section and I see all these feminists engaging in this just abominable levels of sexual shaming language, right? Against these men. Oh, you just can't get laid. Oh, you just got a tiny penis. Oh, blah blah blah. And I'm thinking, I thought we were against. I thought feminism was against that. So it got me interested in the website, because the men in the comment section, they weren't backing down. They weren't shutting up and going away, right? They have all of these women descending on them and giving them, oh, you must be gay and stuff like that. And these men weren't going to have any of it. And I was like, well, these are actually the kind of people that I grew up around, you know, the kind of men that I grew up around that I admire. And so I stuck around and I read a bunch of other articles and I realized there were a whole host of other issues uh, facing men. And there was this, uh, and that the feminist narrative was not only false, but it was entrenched in all of our institutions. And that was when I sort of felt like I had to start really talking about it and learning about it and all of that. And then I
Which is
met
ironic.
then I met
Very
the
ironic.
man that I'm with right now, and his experience and his encouragement led me to um, become the public person that I am. So
And the feminists claim that we're living under a patriarchy with institutionalized misogyny, blah, 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 blah. And you're saying quite the opposite. In fact, Christina Hoff Sommers, in her book, The War Against Boys, which I read a long time ago when she first wrote it, and also her first book, Who Stole Feminism,
mhm.
she talks about finding out that these women that she thought she had common cause with,
Yeah.
she realized, oh my God, they hate my son, because she had a boy. And she realized these women are going to hate my son. And then she discovered that in the schools, contrary to what you're led to believe about men being favored, it was quite the opposite, especially in the lower grades.
Yeah, no, I mean, like there was this a study that the American Association of University Women put out in the mid 1990s, and they said, "Oh, the boys get all this extra attention in the classroom, and that's not fair. That's shortchanging girls." And then, but if you actually, because they only really publicized the summary report, they didn't actually publicize the entire study. If you actually, and oh god, I forget what her name was, but she was at the University of Alaska. um she managed to get a full non-collated copy at extreme high expense of the actual report, and she said, well, you know, the data in the report that they said, oh, boys get extra attention in the classroom, they had actually found that both boys and girls agreed that the extra attention boys got in the classroom was all negative. It was all scolding, right? And but you know, you just delete that part of the sentence and it sounds like boys are getting a better deal than girls, right? And you know, like I said, I was busy with my life, and I was like, what are these women on about? And that sounds ridiculous. And you know, like even my grandmother, you know, she died in 1995, I want to no, 2001. Um she was almost 100 years old. But she basically thought, you know, anytime she saw women on the TV burning their bras and marching for equal rights, you know, and this is a woman who, you know, she grew up in rural poverty, clawed her way to the top of the food chain in terms of public life, right? Became postmistress of her town, ran the general store, right? Was just very, very, she had arguably in terms of her work, she had higher status than the man she married. And she's just like, don't these women have anything useful to do? Because, like, there's work to do, there's actual work to do. And all these women are doing is complaining about how they're not allowed to do work that I've been doing my entire life since I was pulled out of school in grade 8.
Did you see I think it was about 2 years ago, the pussy marchers with those
Oh, geez.
in
Like
California and New York?
I'm just like, you know, That's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing, like, I'm sorry, coming from, my grandmother and then my mother and then myself and my own life and struggles. And I look at these women and I see Madonna complaining about being screwed over because she's a woman. And I'm like, what? What? I see Ashley Judd reciting some slam poetry about young girls getting their period as if it's something, I don't know, special as opposed to something mundane. I'm just I was just I'm blown away by how special, how women just they I'm just gonna pat myself on the back over and over again. Um,
I had a
because
lot
of
of mothers.
all the things I do.
I had mothers come to me because I'm a lawyer, and their 5 and 6 year old boys in the elementary school were being pressured to go on Ritalin. And
Yes.
when I asked the mother, what is the basis for this teacher giving this brilliant diagnosis? Well, she said that my son fidgets in his seat.
He's squirmy. He has he has AIPS, ants in pants syndrome.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's like this is what got me, because it wasn't my sons. My sons were actually really good at sitting still. They're actually so good at sitting still. I wonder if they're ever going to amount to anything. But um but my daughter was the one. My daughter was the one who, if any of my children was going to die before the age of 5, it would have been her, right? Jumping from a height. Yeah, I can jump from there. Or picking up a deadly animal, like a poisonous spider or snake. Like, she had no fear whatsoever. And she really had problems with her attention. And the school was constantly pressuring me to slap a sticker on her. Right? It was, like, they sent her for, yeah, they told me, take her to the doctor and get her diagnosed. And the doctor said it was ADHD. And that all of the teachers said, yeah, no, it's not that. Um, then she had an assessment, full psych ed assessment, and was judged to be 5 grade levels above her actual. She was in grade 1 and she was assessed at grade 5. She was doing everything at grade 5 level, right? But she was extremely autistic, and the teachers were like, yeah, 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 that's the ticket. That'll unlock the funding, right? We can get extra funding for her. And I was like, why does she need extra funding? She's at the top of her class academically, and she's catching up quickly in terms of her social skills. So, like, why are you pushing for this? And even the psychologist who assessed her said, it's up to you whether you want to consent to a diagnosis being placed on her file. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't want anything on her permanent record. Maybe when she's in grade 8, if we're still in this same place, we can talk about it. But they really wanted a diagnosis. And as far as Ritalin and Dexedrine and other stimulants to treat ADHD, Adderall, and stuff like that, those are off-label uses. They're not on-label use in children,
Absolutely.
right? It's just like puberty blockers. Puberty blockers are not puberty blockers. What they were originally developed for was to treat hormone-sensitive cancers, reproductive cancers. So uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, blah, 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 to slow the advancement of those cancers. That's the only application of those drugs that have been tested through double-blind clinical trials, right? And then the medical establishment said, oh, well, every once in a while there's a 6-year-old girl who's menstruating, and walking around with a sex drive. And wouldn't her parents prefer that not to be the case, right? For precocious puberty. So they started delaying puberty with these drugs off label. And I got to tell you, if my 6-year-old daughter was walking around with a sex drive capable of being impregnated, I might put her on puberty blockers. I might do that. But that's off-label use, and its use in kids that identify as transgender or gender dysphoric. That's also off-label use. And the reason it's off-label, and it's still off-label, is because they've never been able to run double-blind clinical trials on these drugs, because no study that they could actually put together and propose would pass an ethics board. And yet we're prescribing them for 10 and 12-year-olds.
Well, these days, medical ethics is the ultimate oxymoron, unfortunately.
It's ridiculous. And the longitudinal studies on Ritalin in children they just started to be published about 5 years ago. And, the results aren't great. And in fact, they've done some work on trying to determine what exactly ADHD is. And there's a significant body of evidence that it's not a disorder. It's actually just a remnant of a nomadic lifestyle that lingers in our current genome, right? Because they looked at these two communities in Africa. They're two tribes. One is nomadic. One just recently became sedentary, settled in villages, and no longer roam around. But they intermarry, they're genetically identical. And they looked at the physical and psychological health outcomes, right, of people who had propensities towards ADHD behaviors. And they found that in the nomadic group, those people had better health outcomes than others, whereas in the sedentary group, they had worse health outcomes than others, right? So you're looking at maybe a population of people who are just not well adapted to the modern environment. They're adapted to a different kind of environment. And what we should be looking at in terms of that research is, how do we adapt our schools to accommodate kids with these propensities? That is what I would prefer to do.
There's a good book about Ritalin by Dr. Peter Breggin called Talking Back to Ritalin.
Oh, yeah.
It's an excellent book. And he did a testimony before Congress. And if you go on YouTube and look at it, he devastates them. Well, let's segue from the young kids, older kids. Talk a little bit about what's going on at Penn State University with this idiotic labeling, and give the viewers a little background on what's happening there and your views on it.
Oh, they want to get rid of freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, those terms, because they're gendered. And they want to get rid of upperclassmen and underclassmen because they're classist.
Why is senior gendered?
Well, because, if I had named my daughter Karen, I wouldn't consider myself Karen Straughn Senior. I would just consider myself,
I see.
It's kind of applied in the in the masculine context. But in terms of that, same with junior, same with freshman. But I mean, if we really want to get into etymology, to, the evolution of language, up until about the 13th century in English, man was just a gender neutral word for adult human being. And the word for men, what we know adult human males, was weremen, and for adult human females was wiffmen. And at some point, we just dropped the special designation for men and they became genderless human adults. Okay. But even more interestingly, right, back around that same time, uh, children, a child was either a fetus in utero, a newborn, or an infant not yet able to walk. That's what that word referred to. And children above that age were referred to, of both sexes, were referred to as girls. Okay, GURL, girls. And then at some point, we all collectively decided to refer to only female minors as girls, and to start referring to male children by the word for male servant or slave,
I see.
which is boy, right? So I'm thinking, if we really wanted to get down to the brass tacks of gendered language and what its implications are, maybe we could look at that before we start talking about, junior and senior and sophomore and freshman. Because that just strikes me as very strange, particularly considering that the patriarchy favors boys. Yet and here's another thing too, right? The word hero derives from another word for servant, right? But
Mhm.
we didn't decide to call our boys heroes.
Right,
We decided to call them boys.
right, right. Interesting.
Yeah, no. So I mean, like, I'm just looking at it like, if we really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty of how language evolves and what it really says about our values, maybe we could go back there and take a look at what that says about feminism's revisionist history, about basically the entirety of, the 10,000 years of humanity, because they really play fast and loose with the truth. They really play fast and loose with uh, in terms of uh, isolating things from context. And I'm sorry, but I'm not offended by junior and senior. In Canada here, we don't use those terms. We use first year, second year, third year, and fourth year for undergraduates. And but apparently Penn State has decided those aren't acceptable either, because if somebody takes 5 or 6 years to complete their undergrad degree, they would probably have their feelings hurt by having it drawn to their attention that they took more than 4 years. So who knows? Like, let's just not call anyone anything. How about that?
Why don't we just use sign language?
Well, because I'm sure they'd figure out that that's problematic too. I mean, like, they figured out that this means white supremacy, not doesn't mean okay, like it's meant from the very first time it was used. Doesn't mean that anymore. It means white supremacy. I'm blown away by these people.
Well, my dad used to say you can judge the size of a person by what the person gets upset and angry about. And the fact that these people are making a federal case out of the word junior and senior,
Yeah.
uh, this shows how completely insane they were and are, because even if I dislike the term, it isn't a big deal. But these people turned every little thing that could possibly be twisted into a slight against them into
Mhm.
a major federal case about everything.
Yeah.
And
No,
I think
like,
men
okay,
are
just
intimidated. Go ahead.
just to give an example, right, of something that I could see upsetting somebody, or a group, right? So my husband and I, we were watching the movie 300 for the second time last night, and he paused it at one point, and he said, I can actually see why the Iranians, the Persians, were a little annoyed by this movie, right? I can see why they felt insulted by this movie, maligned by it, right? Um, and yeah, I was like, yeah, it really doesn't portray the Persians in a very good light. It portrays them as monsters. Um, so yeah, I can kind of see that. Um, I still wouldn't if I was Iranian or Persian, just like I don't see when I watch, because I'm of Norse heritage, right? And I watch Vikings, and I don't see that as vilifying me just because it's portraying my ancestors as being ruthless and rapers and pillagers and land stealers and Ivar the boneless and all of that stuff, right? um like I you can sort of but you can sort of see how some people could get offended by portrayals of the groups that they belong to that are actually vilifying, actually demonizing, right? But the fact that women don't feel included by the words junior and senior or freshman, uh, I don't know if I can swear here. Can I swear?
Yeah, you can swear.
I have zero fucks to give. Okay? Zero fucks to give. I'm more concerned with actual real problems like, I don't know, fathers who are denied access to their children for no good reason, men who are jailed or convicted of interpersonal crimes against women on little to no evidence. Uh, things.
You must believe the woman.
Oh, no, I do not. I do not. I don't believe anybody by default. Like and I get men who contact me and they say I've been falsely accused of something, right? And then I generally send them off to a woman. And if you ever have any viewers who have been falsely accused of something, even in the United States, she uh, operates a charity in Canada, but she has involved herself in some cases in the U.S. Um, Her name's Diana Davison. She runs a charity called the Lighthouse Project, and it's all about helping wrongfully accused men, right? And particularly for sexual assault and domestic violence charges. And I send these people that contact me to her because she's very good at digging through the minutiae of these cases. And then she will write back to me and say, yeah, no, this guy's full of crap. Or, yeah, no, this guy has actually been wrongly accused. Right. So, I mean, like, we don't believe anybody out of hand. I'm not predisposed to believe a man just because he says he's been wrongfully accused. I'm certainly not going to be predisposed to believe a woman just because she says she's been wronged by a man. And because people are people, and and people sometimes do shitty things. So
What they've done is they've criminalized the shitty things. And there are certain things in life that
well,
you,
they've criminalized certain shitty things, right? But lying to the police about being sexually assaulted is no longer a crime in Canada. Lying on the stand about being sexually assaulted is no longer a crime in Canada. I
you're
mean, it's
probably
technically a crime,
familiar
but
with the Duke University case.
oh yeah, the Duke lacrosse case. Yeah, no. Mike Nifong got disbarred over that, which was probably the most serious outcome of any wrongful accusation of sexual assault in the United States to date.
Yeah.
So a prosecutor got disbarred.
And the university condemned those kids in the beginning without any evidence whatsoever.
No evidence at all. It happens all the time. You should look up the name of, oh God, this, I watched the interview that he did after he was exonerated. He was a college football player named Praise Martin Ogwike. And when you watch the interview, because he was accused by a woman, a young woman in his college, who had basically had sex with almost every member of the football team, and had actually texted one of her friends, and said, if this guy doesn't be my boyfriend, that's it, I'm done, and something's going to happen, right? And then she talked him into bed. He didn't want to date her afterwards, and she accused him of rape. And then he's doing this interview, and the interviewer says something like, do you have hard feelings? And he's like, no, I forgive her, right? I just want to put it all past me and everything. This whole year-long ordeal that he went through. And he's just like, yeah, no, I just want to let bygones be bygones. I don't want her to be punished and all of this. And I'm thinking to myself, is this the patriarchy? Is this the evil misogynistic patriarchy that we've all been hearing about? Right? Where this guy was dragged through the mud, lost his career, his football career, dealt with this accusation for a whole year, right? Was finally exonerated, right? Everybody knows she falsely accused him out of vindictiveness because he didn't want to date her. And then he says, no, I forgive her. I, God's my judge. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's the evil patriarchy that oppresses women, I guess.
It also seems that the men, because I put some blame on them, become such wimps that they allow women to intimidate them, and actually are intimidated by these women. And
Well, it's because if you are seen as attacking a woman, other men will come after you, right? That's why, right? Like this is not something where only one gender is to blame, right? For these kinds of problems, right? When a man hits a woman in public, and this is a story that my husband shared. He was about 18 years old. He was walking home from work, and he comes across a man slapping his girlfriend around at the bus station around midnight, right? And so he puts the guy in a headlock. And then the woman picks up her purse and starts attacking him and saying, you leave him alone. Right. And then he's just like, okay, this is your guys' problem. Not interested. I'm just going to go on my merry way. Right. Because none of this is like the fault of one gender or the other. That's one of feminism's biggest problems, is every single thing, including the fact that women slut shame women more than men slut shame women, right? They still want to blame that on men and on patriarchy and on the system that men constructed. And I'm just like, no, women actually have power. Women actually contribute to how society functions, right? They have a say in how all of this works, right? In terms of, their collective desires, their collective needs, their collective influence on how things are done. This is not just a man problem. And as an anti-feminist, I can tell you it's not just a woman problem. It's not even just a feminist problem, right? It's, there are lots of conservative people that join forces with feminists, to achieve specific goals. And, it's a problem with everybody's perceptions of how things work and how we're willing to kind of not see what's right in front of our lying eyes.
My wife pointed out to me when we were at the ball field when the kids were younger, and she noticed it first.
Mhm.
Said, Bob, listen to the fathers talking to their kids, cheering them on, kick the ball, blah, blah, blah. Every one of the men we were listening to sounded effeminate. And we began to notice that men more and more are not talking in a masculine tone or a masculine presence. And these are the feminized men that are becoming very fashionable today. Some people call them metrosexuals.
Yes.
They're not necessarily homosexuals, but
No.
simply act like them. And I see this more and more. I don't hear, I used to be a professional singer,
Mm.
and my son is an opera singer. So I'm very sensitive to voice.
Yeah.
And baritones have normally a Robert Merrill type of masculine sound. And I'm listening to these men today who have families, who have children, and they talk in such a feminine way. And I don't know if you've noticed that.
I have, it's very much, I think, product of, I mean, it is a product of culture, but there's never, ever, ever one explanation for any kind of thing like this that's so widespread, like there's never just one cause. Um, what I actually I'll refer your audience to a documentary that was put up on YouTube by the Canadian Broadcasting Company or corporation called "The Disappearing Male," and what it looks into is how certain chemicals in our environment, petrochemicals in particular, like bisphenol A and phthalates. So, bisphenol A is what makes plastics hard and durable. They've been banned in any kind of products that are geared towards children under 3 years old at this point, right? And then phthalates are the cornerstone of the safe baby toy industry because they make plastics soft and pliable, right? But they leach into the environment, these phthalates and bisphenol A, and they can cross the placental barrier and they interrupt or interfere with male sexual development, right? So, what you have at this point is, and it's not just in humans, it's across the animal kingdom. They've been doing studies on, they start with amphibians, they move to reptiles, especially aquatic reptiles, right? Then to mammals. But what they've been finding is that male genitals are shrinking over time, sperm counts are shrinking. The World Health Organization has, I think they have reduced what is considered to be the normal male sperm count and the normal male testosterone level several times since the 1970s. Because if they didn't keep lowering it, then more than half of all males in the Western world would be considered abnormally low, right? So we're looking at something that I think is also being contributed to by certain biological responses to environmental factors, and to just you know, hormones really do matter. They really do matter. And when you're looking at, that initial surge of sexual differentiation that occurs in utero around starting around 6 to 8 weeks or something like that, and that's like a massive surge of testosterone that the male fetus gets from that he produces himself, and then it does its magic, and it turns a proto vagina, inverts it, and turns it into a penis. And, the testes, the scrotum forms, and then the testes later descend into that, and all of those things, right? Right. Well, we're seeing more issues with gender confusion. We're seeing more issues with hormone levels. There were these 4 guys who used to work for BuzzFeed. Now they are the quintessential metrosexual, soy riddled men that you're talking about. Anyway, they branched out on their own. They're called the Try Guys, and they went and they wanted to know which of them was the most attractive of the 4 men. And one part of that was having their testosterone levels checked. And the guy with the highest testosterone level actually registered as a healthy 80-year-old man.
80 years old.
80-year-old man that's the expected testosterone level. And I mean, some of it's environmental, some of it's like chemical, some of it is psychological and emotional, because testosterone, you boost your testosterone when your team wins the game, right? They've done this at sports games, right? Where the fans in the stands, they take a saliva test before and after the game, and the team that wins gets a surge of testosterone, and the team that loses gets a drop in testosterone, and that's just how it works, right? So when you set up a situation where the chemical environment is impairing men's testosterone levels, and then on top of that, the psychological and emotional environment is also impairing, because there's no way to win as a man in today's society, right? Because, if you beat that woman for the job, you're a jerk who was playing life on the easiest setting and took an opportunity away from a more deserving woman. But if you don't beat her for the job, right, you're a loser who couldn't even beat her despite playing life on easy setting, right? So it's like this is the situation men are in, where they actually can't get a win that they really feel deep down. And so it's no wonder we're having problems with testosterone, and all those people who say, testosterone poisoning and testosterone and aggression and all of that stuff. No, there's no direct correlation between a man's testosterone level and how aggressive, in terms of the higher the testosterone, the higher his incidences of inappropriate aggression are. What you tend to find is that men high in testosterone tend to be more confident, be more content with their lives, be more ambitious, be more fair in bargaining, and they don't lie as much.
I had one of my female friends come with me to give advice to a guy who was going through a divorce.
Mhm.
And the wife was absolutely a monster. And she was affecting the kids. She was attacking him to the kids.
Mhm.
She was doing, and he was like the nicest guy in the world, who it was the divorce was not his calling at all.
Mhm.
But I think my female friend gave him the right advice. She said to him, grow a set of balls, just like that. And,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, testicularity, where art thou?
I agree. And I'm a high testosterone woman. I've got the hand structure. If you can see, my ring finger is longer than my index finger. I'm a masculinized woman. I got some extra testosterone in the womb. Um, and I'm looking at a lot of the men around me, and I'm like, I could do a hell of a lot better fighting off zombies than you could. But that's what we're going, what we're going to see, I think, in the not too distant future is, we're going to have a hard correction, because the system that we've set up with props for women, we're propping up women at the expense of men. Men are the only net taxpayers in Western societies, right? The women don't contribute anything more into the tax system than they pull out in services, right? So as a group. So we're looking at men subsidizing women, not being rewarded for it with, a wife and kids that they can call their own and that they have access to and all of this. So men are just checking out. And when it's men holding up the entire system, when they check out, there's going to be a problem.
I
And
mean,
then
like
when that,
Atlas Shrugged?
yeah, yeah. Atlas can't afford to shrug, because if Atlas shrugs, you die, right?
Exactly.
And so what's going to happen is the entire edifice will fall, and then we're going to be in some kind of version of a zombie apocalypse where men will have to step up and grow some balls, and women will have to start behaving like women. And when I say like women, I don't mean taking to their fainting couches. I mean getting down into the dirt and planting vegetables, and picking up a rifle and guarding their husband when he's sick, and things like that. Shit that pioneer women did. Shit that my great grandmother did, that my grandmother did, that my mother did. Get up on the roof, check the shingles, right?
How
Those are
about raising their sons to act like men?
Yeah, well, I don't know how my mother would have raised sons, because she didn't have any, but she raised me. She raised two other girls. I'm not scared to get up on that roof and check those shingles, right? I'm not scared to pick up a sawzall or a chainsaw. You can even look on my YouTube channel. There's a
By the
video
way,
there called
what is
Goddamn Tree. I climbed 25 feet up a tree with the chainsaw.
what is your, if the viewers want to follow up and learn more about you and take a look at what you're writing and saying, where can they go?
Girl Writes What. So YouTube/user/Girl Writes What, or they can just Google my name. And like, honestly, we have built a breed of weak men and weaker women in Western society, and
Just had to shut the window.
we're going to have a problem at some point.
That's for sure. Well, I'm sorry, spell your last names for the view.
Straughan.
So it's Karen Straughn, and Girl Writes What?
Yes, rights as in I write books, as opposed to not rights as in men's rights. So
Okay, well, it's a pleasure talking to you. You're a very interesting lady, have a lot to say, which is fine.
yeah, I am sorry. I
No,
do
that's
go
great. Yeah, that's great. It's great. See that even a male chauvinist like me allows women to talk.
on. There you go. There you go.
All right, you take care.
You too.
Good to have you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay.